Hi, I'm Dave Hilowitz. So it's finally happening. I'm finally getting into modular synths. But before I can do that, I need to build a case. I can't spend a bunch of my hard-earned money on module after module if I have nowhere to put them. So that's what this video is about. Obviously, it's possible to just go out and buy a case, but that can get pretty expensive. I was looking around and I saw a lot of cases that were in the $200, $300 ranges and, up from there. I'm just getting started in modular and I don't necessarily want to spend $200 or $300 on something before I even own any modules. So I'm going to build my own. Pretty much anything that you want can be a case. You can get an old suitcase, you can get an old wooden box, as long as it has the right dimensions and as long as you have a power supply. When it comes to power supplies for Eurorack modules, there are a bunch of different options. You can kind of build your own. I mean, you're not building the transformer, but you're basically rigging it up yourself. That total should cost about $40. Or you can buy something like, I'm going to buy this tip-top Micro Zeus, which basically does all of the hard work for you. One of the reasons that I chose not to make my own power supply from scratch is that can be a little bit dangerous if you don't know what you're doing. You're actually dealing with the high voltage that comes out of the wall, not like the step-down 12 volts that a Eurorack runs on. So yeah, I just as soon stay away from it. Okay, so now I figured out what my power source is. Now I need a box. As it happens, I've got a ton of wooden boxes in my basement. I build cigar box guitars, violins, cellos, that sort of thing. And anytime I see a nice box, I buy it. And I've got a nice stash. So before I can choose a box, I need to actually do some planning. Planning is super important in the world of modular. In fact, it's so important that there's a website called Modular Grid that lets you spec out your entire system before you even spend any money. In the world of Eurorack, there are several constraints that determine whether or not a module will work with your system. First, there's width, which is expressed in a unit called HP, or horizontal pitch. Before you get started, you'll want to measure your rack and see how many HP you have to work with. The next most important unit is electrical current, which is expressed in a unit called milliamps. Each power supply has a milliamp rating, and you have to be careful not to exceed that. The final piece of information that determines whether or not a module will actually fit in your system is depth. In my case, I'm not too worried about that one. Once you've got your synth all filled in, Modular Grid even shows you the width and the milliamps that your setup uses. They say that when you're starting with Eurorack, one of the most important things is to define what your goals are with your setup. Like some people want to use it for effects. Some people want to have like a self-contained modular system that can like make beats. My goal is actually a little bit different than both of those. My goal is to have like a self-contained little synth that I can hook up to my computer, very similar to the way that I use like an outboard synth, like the Micro Freak or something like that. So I'm not necessarily looking to buy 27 different modules so that the thing can produce cool music while I'm in another room or something like that. That's not where I am yet. I'll get there. But yeah, right now I have pretty modest goals. So given that, I have chosen a tiny box. It used to have tiny bottles of port in it, I guess. One of the reasons I chose such a small box is I know that if I choose a nice big box, and I have like the perfect box, of course, if I choose that box, I know I'm going to feel some pressure to like fill it up. And I don't want that kind of pressure on my wallet right now. So I've deliberately chosen a box that's like a little bit too small for my needs. Okay, so we've got our box, we've got our power supply. What's next? Now, the normal thing to do is once you've got your box, you order some rails and you can order them to size so that, they fit exactly the width of your box. Or you can buy long ones and then cut them down with a hacksaw yourself. I've ordered my rails, but they haven't arrived yet. And I'm just eager to get started on this. So instead, I'm going to actually cut up the lid of this box and use it as rails. So what I'm doing here is actually not really kosher. You're not supposed to mount Eurorack modules on wood because some of them actually heat up quite a bit. And if you do this, in theory, the whole thing could catch fire. I'm not too worried about that because, as I said, I have Eurorack rails on the way, but, for the next week, it's going to be wood. So my first order of business is to measure the modules and figure out where they're going to be placed. My first actual module that's not the Micro Zeus power module is going to be Plaits by Mutable Instruments. So anybody who has watched my channel knows that I'm really into the Micro Freak. One of the things about the Micro Freak is it uses a lot of code from Mutable Instruments Plaits. So I figured I would order Plaits and just kind of like see what the differences are, since I know already that's a palette of sounds that I really like. Okay, so back to my project. So the rails are done. Now that I've done that, I'm basically just going to drill little pilot holes where I think I'm going to want to place the modules. I've kind of sketched it in pencil. Okay, time to screw things in. First, I'm going to screw in the Micro Zeus. Next, I'm going to screw in Plaits, but before I do that, I'm going to make sure to attach the ribbon cable to one of the sockets that's coming out of the Micro Zeus. If I forget to do that, the Plaits won't get any power. Okay, it's starting to look like a modular rig, albeit the world's smallest one, but anyway. Generally, the minimal Eurorack setup, if you're going to make synth sounds, let's say, is an oscillator, a filter, a VCA, which is like a voltage-controlled amplifier, and then something to generate an envelope. The reason you need an envelope generator and a VCA, an amplifier, is generally when you buy an oscillator, it's just going to be producing a tone constantly. Like if you were to just turn it on, it would be like, woo. Once you have an envelope generator and an amplifier in the mix, you can basically stop it and start it with a keyboard or with a sequencer or whatever. I'm lucky. The Plaits has those two elements built in. You can still use them with an outboard VCA, and I think most people probably do. But for the purposes of my super minimal setup right now, I can just plug my controller, in this case an Arturia keystep, directly into the inputs on Plaits and use it just like a standalone synth. So that's pretty cool. So what I've done here is I've created possibly the smallest Eurorack setup you could possibly have. It has no other components other than this one module that's doing all of the work. It almost defeats the purpose of being modular at all. There's no other components. Having said that, let's make some music. The thing about Plaits is it has a ton of different oscillators. 8 melodic oscillators and 8 percussive ones. I'm just going to cycle through them all and find one that feels right. I kind of like that. Of course, I wasn't actually recording. I'm praying that Ableton Live was listening anyway. I'm just going to hit capture and hopefully whatever I was just playing will show up in a clip. Yeah, there it is. I think I'm just going to take that tail end portion and fix it up a bit. Okay, so I'm going to lengthen this clip. Also, the bit I played was in 6/8, but I'd actually prefer to be working in 4/4. I'm going to take the start of each chord and place it at the start of each bar line. Of course, now we've got some gaps. I'm going to fill those gaps by just kind of adding random notes from within that same arpeggio. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is record audio for this bit. Now that I've got that basic audio, I'm going to try to grab some alternate versions of this. Each oscillator on Plaits has 3 parameters that can be modulated to kind of change the sound and morph it. I don't have any external envelope generators or LFOs, so I'm going to do things the old-fashioned way with my hands. Basically, I'm just going to hit record and turn the knobs and see what sounds come out of my speakers. Okay, I think that's it. If you enjoyed this video, it'd be great if you could hit like, and if you haven't done so already, make sure that you subscribe. I got a bunch more videos coming, so yeah, see you soon.